Have you ever watched something years after the first time and felt like you were a different person, yet the story somehow knew exactly how to meet you where you were? Or loved a movie or show so early in life that it became part of who you are, and every revisit feels like touching an old scar or strumming a favorite chord? Why do stories land the way they do? Why does timing matter as much as the craft? How does your own life experience become a co-writer of sorts in the meaning-making process? When a story sees you and you see yourself in it, I find it so powerfully fascinating and important how age, life experience, and worldview affect your ability to enjoy or resonate with any given story or piece of media. Even the most well-written film, show, anime, book requires you meet it and it meet you at the right time. What stage of life you're in, how old you are, what life experiences you hold. You can consume something at one age or point in your life and it not resonate, but come back a year or few years later, one or two specific life events later, and it hits you like a truck and you identify with it totally. You feel seen and heard and understood. Or you're just simply mature enough when you weren't back then. Or conversely, you're maybe too grown up for the story to captivate you the way it could have back then. It is one of the richest, most alive parts of how we humans interact with stories. There is a deep ecology to narrative resonance where the story and the self meet in a particular configuration of time and experience, emotional readiness, memory, identity, context. It feels kind of magical, right? When it aligns and happens, you can almost view it as a conversation between two ever-changing, evolving things, a meeting of sorts. The story, which has its own internal structure, its own themes, its own emotional architecture, and all its own complexity over here. And you, who are always changing in what you have lived through, what you value, what you understand, what you've gone through, what you dream about, and what you fear, what wounds are open or healed, what parts of your identity are active or dormant, you bring a lived life to that meeting, to that conversation. The same sequence of images, lines of dialogue, motifs or ideas or allegories or whatever, they can all either land like little whispers you barely hear or acknowledge, splashes that startle and get your attention but dry off quick, or seismic ruptures that just change everything for you. All depending on where you are when you receive them. That is why you also can't just watch or read or encounter once. You have to reread, rewatch, re-encounter everything, because you never know when one of those is going to feel like destiny, to be honest. I read Grapes of Wrath when I was 17 for my AP English class in high school. Wrote a 6 or 7 page essay on one character, Jim Casey, the preacher. And I feel that story and character changed my socio-political and philosophical worldview forever. That was the first book I ever cried reading. And there are several points in that story where I cry. I watched the original FLCL for the first time recently. Despite the fact that the fantastic animation, the nuanced, powerful messaging, and the themes that I understood what it was trying to convey, I just simply didn't care for it. It's a 6-episode anime about adolescence, teenagehood, puberty, sexual awakening, your body and your mind changing through the formative years. It's an iconic anime. So, of course, let's watch it. But I'm in my late 20s now. But I know if I watched it when I was 13 or 14, it would have had a much stronger, lasting impression on me. I grew up on Star Wars and Harry Potter. I am biased in holding soft spots for these franchises, even though I don't engage with them any longer, really. Andor has been the only thing to really capture my interest in Star Wars again, and that's precisely because it was a mature story that met me at my age, where I am now, not where I was in 1998, 2001, and met me at my current standards. But say I never watched a Lord of the Rings movie until my mid-20s just a few years ago. And while I thought the filmmaking itself was superb, I just don't care about Lord of the Rings. I'm sorry. I didn't grow up with that big three. If my dad took me to see Fellowship of the Ring in theaters, I probably would have been as much of a Lord of the Rings kid as I was Star Wars and Harry Potter. Wong Kar-wai is arguably my favorite film director. In the Mood for Love is the greatest romance film ever made to me. Fallen Angels is in my top 5 favorite movies of all time. The dialogue that's in Chungking Express and Days of Being Wild hit me like a ton of bricks every time. But just 5 years ago, 10 years ago, for sure, this would not have been the case at all. Because to me, life experience and age are frankly required to fully, truly appreciate the very facets of Wong Kar-wai stories. But take Goodfellas it's my all-time favorite movie. I have a gigantic Goodfellas framed film poster right here above me. That hasn't changed since I was like 12 when I first saw it with my dad renting it from Blockbuster. I've seen it probably 100 times since then, not even being hyperbolic. And I still have the same fun and still have the same look of awe and wonder on my face as I did back then. Like just remembering me jaw open, eyes wide, glued to the screen, listening to the soundtrack of And Then He Kissed Me by the Crystals, watching the Steadicam one shot long take, walking through the Copa, the maze of the kitchen, Henry Hill handing cash to everyone he sees, leading into the main room, a table carried and placed right up front just for them. What do you do? I work in construction.
What do you do?
What?
What do you do?
I'm in construction.
Watch the scene right now, and I'll still verbally say, God, what a fucking shot. But I find myself not really caring about Scorsese's more recent works. I think he's kind of lost some of his sauce. I was 8 when Spider-Man 2 came out. Spider-Man was already my favorite comic superhero, influenced by my dad, who collected comics since his childhood. And he has like the first 100 issues of Spider-Man, which I grew up reading very delicately and carefully, of course. So, can it really be any surprise Tobey Maguire is my favorite Spider-Man, and that I'm totally biased and still thinking Spider-Man 2 might be the greatest live-action superhero movie ever, and that I don't personally care much for, Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man movies at all. Tom Holland's even less so. I didn't have cable growing up. I never watched Nickelodeon. But the Harold Washington Library here in Chicago carried VHS tapes and DVDs of all Cartoon Network shows. Don't know why. So I grew up on CN that way. Johnny Bravo, Dexter's Lab, Ed, Edd n Eddy, Powerpuff Girls, Codename Kids Next Door, Samurai Jack, Courage the Cowardly Dog, everything. But I never grew up on say SpongeBob or whatever other Nickelodeon shows you can think of. I wasn't a part of that cultural zeitgeist over here with Nickelodeon. Only time I ever saw episodes was hanging out at my best friend's house who had cable, and he loved SpongeBob. So anytime someone quotes SpongeBob, I have no clue what they're referencing. But it honestly doesn't even matter how old you are. A show like that, OG SpongeBob seasons, watch them now, so hilarious regardless of age. If anything, you even get to catch all the innuendos and inside adult jokes now that you understand. I also never grew up on Avatar: The Last Airbender. I binge watched the entire series in a month, like last summer, just to finally say I've seen the whole thing, see why people adore it so much. I gotta say, I didn't care at all about the show. Dare I say, I don't even think it's good. The problem must be, obviously, that I wasn't able to watch it when I was supposed to. However, I also recently binge watched The Fantastic World of Gumball, and that show's amazing. I am definitely not one of those too old for cartoons people. I think that's one of the best cartoons ever made. It's like the opposite of Avatar for me. Maybe I would have loved Avatar as a kid. I don't think it's good now. Gumball, I think I could only love and appreciate more at my age currently than if I watched it back in, when did it come out? Like 2011, when I was 14, 15. I probably wouldn't have cared. I've only been watching anime for the past 5 years. From the moment I first uploaded Hunter x Hunter episode 1 on my channel. That's what I started with. A high bar I set early on. I'm only on episode 80 right now. You can follow my entire journey on my channel here. But how many anime out there am I not going to resonate or identify with because I never watched them on Toonami as a kid? Or conversely, how many anime do I get to watch for the first time at the perfect time in my life now? You know, there's no memories of DBZ or Naruto as a kid for me. If I watched Cowboy Bebop at 10 p.m. on Toonami, how would that compare to when I ultimately watched for the first time as an adult on my channel, deeply analyzing each episode? Or how about all the goosebumps I did get during Psycho Pass and Samurai Champloo, and tears I shed during Grave of the Fireflies that I would not have experienced as a younger me? I'm like 50 episodes into Legend of the Galactic Heroes. I think I'm at a perfect age where I'm loving this kind of story. I'm binge watching Hajime no Ippo. I'm having a blast, genuinely laughing and anticipating next episodes, just like if I was 15. But I tried getting into Inuyasha and could pretty quickly tell I feel too old for this. But if I was 10 or 15 years younger, it would definitely be a formative comfort anime of mine. On the flip side, I couldn't get through season 2 of Vinland Saga. I just lost all interest. I don't care. I'll try to get back into both of them. I hate Terrence Malick movies. Exposition overload, nothingness, boring. And maybe the director I loathe the most. Catcher in the Rye, one of the worst books I ever read in my opinion. Faulkner is a hit or miss for me. I probably read Absalom too early and maybe Sound and the Fury too late. I don't know. People shit on Lost, but I tuned into every episode, every week, for half a decade with my mom as a kid, and I bawled my eyes out at the finale. And I don't even know how young I was then. And I understood it perfectly. And I was in grade school. And I think I've watched Lost from beginning to end every single year. Not even joking. I don't care what people have to say about it, and I don't understand how people don't understand it. Maybe I benefit from watching it air every week on TV, everyone discussing the ideas together, when it was literally the show on primetime television. That was a cultural zeitgeist. Rather than, just another show you stumble upon browsing Netflix. It's one of those, you had to be there. I remember reading Dune for the first time as a teenager It was so overwhelming. I read it again a couple years ago in anticipation for Denis Villeneuve's movie. And it was like I remember nothing at all from that first time. It was so absolutely fresh and new to me, reading with my better eyes and better brain. It wasn't overwhelming at all. It was exactly the type of intricate world building and lore and character building and just complex sci-fi storytelling that my nerdy brain yearns for now. Couldn't put it down. Honestly, in the time it took teenage me just to finish Dune, I read Dune plus Dune Messiah plus Children of Dune. And so it's like, how many films are sitting in my watch list that I've been putting off for ages that I'll watch at the perfect time? Or I waited too long. Or they just aren't my cup of tea anymore. How many books are collecting dust on my shelves up here above me, waiting to be read at the perfect time? How many classics am I going to find overrated? It's just so fascinating and cool and powerful to me how the same story can affect you or not affect you depending on who you are, how old you are, where you are, what's happened to you, etc., etc. Time makes meaning. Stories do not exist in a vacuum. The meaning of text is not fixed in the text alone, but it is co-created by you, the reader, the viewer. What each of us brings to a story, our age, our life experience, our recent events, our emotions, even our cultural backgrounds, what phase of identity we're in, all that shapes what we have taken away from it and even what registers as meaningful at all in the first place. So when I'm reading Grapes of Wrath at 17, I was a teenager already forming my worldview, my socio-political moral orientation. I was already on that path. I was maybe already wrestling with questions of justice, community, purpose, and authority, what my political ideologies were. Steinbeck just found those cracks, and a character like Jim Casey was the hammer, and maybe a mirror. When I watched FLCL at 27, I don't have any internal landscape around adolescence or body shame or sexual confusion. I don't have any identity issues or rebelliousness because I had all that when I was 14. All those exaggerated, chaotic metaphors registered more as stylized noise instead of the real, raw, intimate, disorienting truth that's there. I'm just not 14. I'm 27. Although it's just a story like Goodfellas, entering my life at 12, bonding with my dad over classic cinema. It got anchored with the level of awe it gave me at that time. There's just so many variables at play, even for a perfectly written story to work. Stories have to touch questions during windows where you're exploring those questions. I thought about identity and belonging and autonomy all the time in grade school and high school, but I don't anymore because I have all those things now that I'm an adult. I have my identity. I have my sense of belonging. I have my autonomy. Interpreting stories also requires building from past experience. Stories click when they intersect with your life and are relevant to you. Your emotional state, your accumulation of past emotional experiences, those are filters. If you have gone through trauma, if you have gone through grief or heartbreak or abuse or love or longing, loneliness, instability, disillusionment, you'll be sensitive to very specific things. You will recognize certain things. You will be moved in different ways than others are. And nostalgia is huge too. We all have peak moments. We all have salient, ingrained memories. Nostalgia makes what's old feel evergreen because the memory of the first impact on you is like frozen in awe and excitement and wonder and grandness, which makes every revisit feel like some reverent, special ritual, and it's like in your DNA. Also, what is quality? What does quality look like, sound like? What does a hero look like? How does a hero act? What does a relationship look like? What style is beautiful to you? Our personal tastes and biases it's so interesting. It's all formed by our very first narratives. Literally the very first things your brain and your senses ever consumed. Like what music your parents played in the car or around the house. How much did that affect your taste in music? I had Pink Floyd, Stevie Wonder, Led Zeppelin, Van Morrison, Pearl Jam, Stevie Ray Vaughan, the Commodores, Steely Dan, Bob Marley, Sade, Al Green, Buddy Guy, Lauryn Hill, playing in my ears since the womb. My mom making me watch The Exorcist when I was like 7. Why? But that defined what horror was to me. She also had me watch Titanic at like the same age. That defined what romance was to me. Tuning in every week to Lost on ABC at 7 p.m. Central defined what great television was to me. My soft spot bias for Spider-Man 2 is not just because the storytelling kicks ass. It's because it arrived in my life at the perfect time. Reading my dad's comics, the age when we all start forming our childhood fandoms in our heads. And it was some of my first ever exposure to that very specific, that certain kind of cinematic spectacle, going to the theaters. Why your taste is the way it is tangled with life history. Certain preferences are so personal, they feel essential. Even if I could analytically and logically compare them to others and see the influence or see the bias that I have, see the rosy tint in my glasses. And that's why even recommending anything to a friend can feel so hard and even more upsetting when they don't like it. It's like almost, it feels offensive to you because it is you. And they might not like it because our ages might be different. Our life stages might be different. What's going on in our lives might be different. Our experiences might be different. Am I really going to recommend La La Land to someone who hates musicals and is going through a breakup? Can I really expect a coming of age story that I watched and when I was coming of age to hit the same for my friend who's 28 and comfortable? I would also love to know from you. Here are like some questions to ask yourself. Have there been times, even with an amazingly written story, that you felt too old, or maybe even harder to put your finger on, didn't feel ready enough yet? What are some of the earliest media experiences you feel are part of your identity's scaffolding? What's the foundation? What emotional chords tie them to you? Which stories felt like mirrors to your life at certain points? Are there stories that you rejected before that you now see with empathy and care? Stories that you initially dismissed but came back to later and you found some new meaning? And then what changed in you that allowed that meaning to come forward? Are there stories you love now that you suspect would have been impossible to understand or even annoying to the younger you? So what about your maturity allows you to enjoy those stories now? If you could give your past self at whatever age a list or like a curriculum of media, what would you have your past you read or watch or consume? And how do you distinguish between a story that genuinely really aligns with who you are now and one that is merely comfortable or nostalgic? Like, are there movies you know are crutches, comfort movies, and then movies that genuinely speak to you and genuinely say, this is me? Let me know that. Just at the heart, this is called mutual arrival. Stories don't land the same way on every person. Words, images, characters, plot beats are constant, but the person receiving them is in flux. Meaning is co-created between the work and the audience. A painting, a book, a film can feel like a revelation in your 20s when it felt like noise or nothing in your teens, and vice versa. Think of the first time you saw a love story before you had ever been in love versus the first time you saw the same one after heartbreak. Think of a movie about identity and self-discovery when you were in the middle of scrambling to define who you are versus when you are confident and settled in a self that feels stable. The same exact scenes, the same exact chapters, the same exact notes, but your internal landscape is different. And what do I mean by internal landscape? The internal landscape is all the questions you ask yourself, all the trauma and growth you've gone through, everything you have lost, everything you have gained, everything you're afraid of, and everything you finally understand. Stories are not static gifts we just unwrap once. Stories are relationships that change with time. It's kind of freeing knowing that if something didn't land the first time, it could land somewhere down the line. And there's a kind of wisdom in also recognizing when and why something that once felt profound, once felt like everything, maybe rings hollow, a little hollow. Your story life is a map of yourself in progress. That's how you can view pop culture and view media. And stories you carry with you can be tools or mirrors in the ongoing project that is you in progress. And I hope this little discussion landed somewhere for you. I really enjoyed having this conversation. And so you just gotta remember, even the best written stories have to meet you at the right time. So, having said all that, and with that said, so long, farewell, until next time. Thank you. Have a good one. Peace.